On a particularly cold and damp night, the White family was gathered in the cozy living room of Laburnum Villa. Outside, the wind howled with intensity, but inside, the windows were shut tight, the fireplace crackled warmly, and a game of chess was underway. Mr. White and his son Herbert were deeply focused on their match, while Mrs. White, her gray hair gently tied back, quietly knitted beside the fire. Mr. White, known for his quirky and reckless playing style, seemed to be getting himself into trouble on the board. Realizing too late that he had made a critical mistake, he tried to cover it up so Herbert wouldn't notice. But Herbert, with sharp eyes and a confident grin, delivered a checkmate, winning the game. Mr. White, frustrated by both the loss and the isolation of their home, voiced his annoyance at living in such a remote and muddy place. Mrs. White, ever the peacemaker, tried to lift her husband's spirits, but was interrupted by the sudden arrival of an unexpected visitor. Mr. White, excited at the idea of company, rushed to greet him. It was Major Morris, a tall, broad man with small eyes and a ruddy face, who carried with him the air of distant lands and old stories. After a warm round of greetings, Major Morris joined the family by the fire. Mr. White quickly fetched some drinks, and the room settled into a relaxed and cheerful atmosphere. As the whiskey flowed, the Major began to share mesmerizing tales from his travel stories of distant landscapes, wars, strange epidemics, and unfamiliar cultures. The White family listened intently, captivated. Mr. White, clearly impressed, reflected on how much his friend had changed since their last meeting. Mrs. White showed genuine interest too, while Mr. White mentioned his wish to visit places like India someday. But the Major, with a chuckle, wasn't so enthusiastic. He preferred the comfort of home these days. Then, Mr. White suddenly recalled a story the Major had once begun, but never finished, something about a monkey's paw. Curiosity piqued. The whole family leaned in. Though reluctant at first, Major Morris eventually gave in to their questions and pulled a small, dried-up object from his pocket, a mummified monkey's paw. Mrs. White recoiled in disgust, but Herbert leaned in with fascination. The Major explained that the paw was a magical talisman, cursed by a fakir, to prove how dangerous it is to mess with fate. It could grant 3 wishes to whoever possessed it, but at a terrible cost. Despite his serious warnings, the Whites were clearly intrigued, especially when he confessed that he had used all 3 of his own wishes, and they had all come true in the worst ways imaginable. The next morning, the White House was bathed in the soft glow of winter sunlight, bringing with it a sense of normalcy after a night filled with strange tales and eerie fascination. The monkey's paw, now resting on the sideboard, looked less menacing, more like an odd, old souvenir than anything else. Mrs. White scoffed at the idea of believing in charms and spells in such a modern age, questioning the logic behind fearing a dried-up paw. Herbert, always the joker, teased his parents about it, suggesting Mr. White use it to become an emperor, just to escape Mom's house rules. Mr. White, though skeptical, still had a flicker of belief deep down. Amused by Herbert's joke, but also somewhat tempted, he decided to try it. With a mix of humor and unease, he held the paw and wished for £200, the exact amount they needed to pay off the mortgage. The mood was light, but beneath the laughter, a strange tension hung in the air. It wasn't just a game anymore. Something felt off. The rest of the day went by uneventfully, and the family began to dismiss the paw as nothing more than an exaggerated tale from an old soldier. But that fragile sense of peace was shattered that same evening. There was a knock at the door. It was a man from Ma and Megan's The Company, where Herbert worked. He came bearing devastating news. Herbert had been killed in a tragic accident at work. Shock swept through the room like a cold wind. It didn't feel real. The grief hit them like a brick raw, sudden and unbearable. The man went on, explaining that although the company took no responsibility for the accident, they would be offering compensation to the family. The amount? £200, the exact sum Mr. White had wished for. The room fell silent, heavy with horror. Mr. White froze, overwhelmed with guilt and disbelief, while Mrs. White was consumed by sorrow. The coincidence was too sharp, too cruel. It felt like the universe had twisted their wish into a punishment. The house, once full of warmth and laughter, now sank into a heavy silence of grief and despair. The loss of their only son and the cruel irony of how it had happened left them broken. In the dark days that followed, grief hung over Laburnum Villa like a fog. Mr. and Mrs. White, now without their son, lived in a silence that no words could break. The house that had once echoed with laughter now felt hollow every corner, a painful reminder of what they had lost. They tried to carry on, but Herbert's absence was a weight that never lifted. Then, one night, a terrible idea gripped Mrs. White like a fever. Waking in the middle of the night, eyes wide with a mix of hope and madness, she remembered they still had 2 wishes left. She shook her husband awake, crying and laughing all at once, pleading for him to use the second wish to bring Herbert back. Mr. White, still half asleep and horrified by the suggestion, tried to reason with her, but her desperation ground out his fear. Finally, with trembling hands and a sinking heart, he gave in. He held the monkey's paw once more and made the wish that Herbert would come back to life. The house fell into a thick silence, broken only by Mrs. White's quiet sobs. They waited. Each second dragged on like an hour, and then they heard it. A soft knock at the front door. Mrs. White gasped, her eyes lighting up with wild hope. She ran to the door, convinced her son had returned. Mr. White, filled with dread over what might be standing on the other side, scrambled in panic to find the paw again. The knocking grew louder, more urgent, more alive. Mrs. White fumbled with the locks, trying to open the door, calling Herbert's name through her tears. Mr. White finally found the paw. Hands shaking, heart pounding, he made the third and final wish. And just like that, the knocking stopped. Mrs. White flung the door open. Outside, there was only the cold, empty night. No one was there. Just silence. Just wind. She stood frozen, staring into the darkness. Mr. White stepped beside her. He knew. The last wish had been granted. Whatever had come back had now been taken away. They stepped back inside, the house now even quieter than before. Their son was gone again this time, by their own hands. The weight of their choices, of wishes made without understanding their cost, settled over them like a shroud. They lay in bed that night, neither speaking. Only the ticking of the clock filled the room, each sound a reminder of the price they had paid. The story of the Whites remained a haunting tale of how even the purest of wishes can bring the darkest of consequences. The message behind this story is a warning about the unpredictable consequences of tampering with fate. Even heartfelt desires, when forced against the natural order, can lead to pain and tragedy. It's a reminder that not every wish is worth making, and sometimes wisdom lies in accepting life as it is. Death, destiny, and the balance of the universe are not ours to control. See you in the next video.